Now we'll move on to a breakdown of the plot of episode 178. Before watching, don't forget to like, this helps. You came here on purpose to stop my marriage, didn't you, Han Li? Or are you only planning to look at me once and then leave without saying anything? Of course I want to take you away with me. I want you to become my wife, and no matter who tries to cut in and steal you, he will first have to ask whether I agree or not. You talk as if everything is already decided. When did I ever promise to marry you? Yet seeing you act so stupidly serious, I somehow cannot really get angry and only feel shy. Back then, after the blood trial in the Forbidden Ground, when I lost my body to you, the very first thought that arose in my heart was to cut you, that insignificant chi condensation cultivator, into countless pieces and then burn your bones to ashes with my vermilion bird ring to avenge myself. I guarded my purity for over 100 years, and my body was destroyed in your hands. So how could I not hate you to the extreme? And you really almost lost your life on that day. But at that time, for some reason, my heart suddenly softened. I did not kill you. And later, after we parted and I returned to the sect, no matter whether I cultivated techniques or meditated in seclusion, I could never get rid of your shadow. Your figure appeared in my mind again and again, growing clearer and more frequent, and only then did I understand that you had already turned into my inner heart demon, and if I did not find a way to get rid of you, my cultivation would probably never advance again. There were only two ways to wipe out this demon. One was to marry you and become your wife, so that we would be as one and the demon would naturally disappear. And the second was for you to vanish from this world, so that the shadow would gradually fade as well. Because our realms and status were too far apart back then, marrying you was basically impossible. So after being tormented for a long time, I gritted my teeth and decided to kill you. But before I could act, the 6 demonic sects attacked, and I met you again at the 7 sects camp. At that time you had already reached Foundation establishment, which shook my decision, because if you kept advancing, it would not be impossible for us to become Tao companions, while you, when you saw me masked, were extremely excited, yet my cold attitude poured a basin of cold water over you and made you depressed for days. Later, because of Lingshou Mountain's betrayal, the 7 sects were defeated, and all the sects arranged for their core disciples to retreat from your country. And as the youngest core formation cultivator, I was also on the list of those who would leave first. But I had a close friend in the Huangfeng Valley, and from her messages, I vaguely learned about Patriarch Linghu's retreat plan and realized that you might be in mortal danger as bait. So, as if possessed, I suddenly had only one thought: to rush back and save you. When I arrived, the battle was already over. Most of you bait disciples had been killed. Only a small part had broken through, and I could not learn whether you were alive or dead. So I had no choice but to return to the sect and help the disciples left behind fight the demonic cultivators, where I was heavily injured by a core formation cultivator. While breaking out of the encirclement, I was chased by several juniors, and what happened after that you should already know. The so-called Nangong Ping in this world never existed. That person was just me using disguise. It was not that I did not want to meet you with my true face, but as a core formation cultivator, I could not openly tell you that I had come especially to save you and wanted to marry you, and moreover, after I had absorbed a large part of your cultivation, I felt even more embarrassed to see you as Nangong Wan. I clearly said that if you were willing to go back to the moon covering sect with me, I would show my true face, help you form a golden core, and then marry you. But I do not know whether you were really greedy for money or just too stubbornly manly. You only agreed to take some spirit stones and let me leave. When I returned to the moon covering sect, and after our sect had gained a firm foothold in Bailiang country, I secretly sneaked into your country once more to look for you. But the news I got was very bad. I only learned that you had been hunted again by the ghost spirit sect, and no one knew the details. Soon after, I was discovered by demonic cultivators and had no choice but to return to the 9 Nations Alliance. And from then on there was no more news of you. I thought you had most likely fallen, and my heart demon about you gradually faded. Later I was lucky enough to condense my nascent soul and became an elder of the moon covering sect, living like this until now. And only when I learned not long ago that you had suddenly appeared as a nascent soul elder of the Luo Yun sect did that sealed part of my heart start to stir again. As for that Wei Li Chun, I met him several years ago during an outing, He is an elder of the Huai sect, and I do not like him at all, because he is practically a typical hypocrite, looking refined on the surface, but filthy inside, with 7 or 8 so-called female disciples. I also heard that he secretly cultivated a dual cultivation method that harms women to nourish himself. So when he proposed to me the first time, I refused without hesitation. And when you ask why things became like this now, the reason lies with his granduncle, Wei Wuya. Wei Wuya is one of the 3 greatest Nascent Soul cultivators in Tiannan, the supreme elder of the 9 Nations Alliance. He cultivates a strange, little-known technique and can take other people's lives invisibly with a casual move. His powers are far beyond the imagination of ordinary cultivators. He did not directly make things hard for me, but Wei Liqun somehow managed to persuade him to intervene, and in our moon-covering sect, the original Grand Elder was replaced by a senior martial sister of mine, whose cultivation is not low, but whose ambition is very strong, and she has always been at odds with me. Although another elder tried to mediate between us, our relationship remained extremely bad, and after I rejected Wei Liqun's proposals several times, he must have negotiated something with Wei Wuya, because about half a year later my senior sister suddenly attacked and restrained me, forcing me to marry him. You said she must be crazy to use such despicable methods against a fellow Nascent Soul cultivator, and I also never thought she would go that far. But later I found out that the condition offered by Wei Wuya was indeed hard to refuse. If the moon-covering sect agreed to the marriage, our sect and even 6 allied sects would be allowed to expand outside of Beiliang country, and Wei Liqun promised that after marrying me, he would cut ties with the Huai sect and join the moon-covering sect, which is a beautiful double gain. With such a tempting offer, she naturally did not hesitate to use all means. She even spread the news that I had agreed to dual cultivate with Wei Liqun and began to prepare a grand celebration, wanting to turn everything into a done deal so that I would not be able to go back on my word. In fact, I have never agreed to this marriage. At the very beginning, I deliberately said that I am going to marry to test your heart, and seeing your reaction now, I can finally be sure that you came here to take me, not just to watch from afar. You happily said that it means I was never truly willing to marry Wei Liqun, and I then asked you in turn why. Since you reached the Nascent Soul stage years ago, you did not come to find me earlier. If you had come 1 year sooner, perhaps all of this would not have happened. You wanted to explain something, but when you thought carefully, you also felt it was strange, because even though you vaguely felt that I might be the one you truly loved, for some reason you never dared to face this feeling directly. And if not for the sudden news of my marriage, you might have kept hesitating. I told you that I am similar. Even though our experience and abilities far surpass mortals, in matters of emotion, both of us are facing this for the first time, and so we are unfamiliar and afraid. We are not ordinary men and women who can burn all their feelings in a brief, dazzling moment of passion. For the sake of the best cultivation state, we cultivators have to dilute and bury most of our emotions deep inside. And after the first surge of passion, what remains in the long run is often only a calm and enduring mutual respect, not fiery love. So when I finally learned that you were still alive, after the initial joy, I still thought for 2 days and nights before deciding to accept you according to my true heart. And when I finished saying this, I reached out and held your hand. You were silent for a moment, then covered my fingers with your other hand, feeling the softness and warmth of my palm, and a gentle warmth rose in your heart. But I blushed, quickly pulled my hands back, and gave you a slightly reproachful look. You did not mind and smiled, saying that although I was trapped here, I seemed surprisingly calm, so I must have already thought of a way out. Otherwise, I would not show not even a trace of panic on my face. I smiled, my eyes flickering slyly, and admitted that although I am under house arrest in this cave, only a few high-level people know about it. Normal disciples do not. Otherwise, I would not have been able to receive a sound transmission talisman from that Tang Jr. To prevent me from escaping, they placed several restrictions on me. But those ordinary seals are nothing. After my Nascent Soul stage in the Reincarnation Jade Maiden Palace art, many inconceivable divine abilities appeared, so I can dissolve these restrictions little by little and restore my cultivation at any time. The only troublesome thing is the heart-binding art cast personally by my senior sister, a spell she prepared to use during the wedding. In case I still refused to agree to the marriage, she would use this technique to temporarily control me. She planted this restriction with her own essence blood, and the key lies in a restriction token. As long as I stay within 100 li of the token, I have to endure being manipulated. But luckily our cultivation is not too far apart, so she can only control some simple movements. She cannot use my spells or spiritual power. Originally I planned, in the days right before the ceremony, to wait for the moment when they would be most relaxed, suddenly restore my full power, and flee far away in one go. Once I get beyond the control range of the token, there is nothing they can do about me. Now that you are here, this problem naturally is handed over to you. After all, you are the man who wants to marry me, and I have heard that you easily defeated a Nascent Soul cultivator of the same level, so you should have some means. Although the heart-binding restriction is indeed troublesome and cannot be easily nullified without destroying the token. You frowned and said that apart from smashing the token, there is no simple way. But even if we really cannot solve it, we can still leave the moon covering sect together and go far away, where its influence cannot reach us. I replied that the token should be in my senior sister's hands, and you immediately narrowed your eyes, a cold gleam flashing, saying that you would simply go and take it from her, at the same time helping me vent my long-held anger. I laughed and shook my head, explaining that I was only testing your intentions and did not truly want you to go rob the token. My senior sister is already at mid-Nascent Soul. Her cultivation and techniques are far above ours in the early stage, so it would be safer for us to slip away and spend 10 or more years slowly refining the restriction. You answered that we could at least try first, and if it did not work, we could still run. You told me confidently that even with the restriction on my body, you could force your way out while protecting me. So I proposed not to attack the Sunset Hall where my senior sister lives, but to lure her here and then use the cave's hidden formation together to catch her off guard. You asked whether the cave formations were still usable, since when you entered you saw that some of them appeared broken, and I told you that while some surface restrictions had indeed been destroyed by my senior sister, I still had one powerful hidden seal that she had not discovered. You then took out a few sets of formation flags and discs from your storage pouch, deciding to limit the formations area to the hall itself, choosing especially concealed patterns so that even someone probing with spiritual sense would have trouble noticing them. I asked for half a day to strip away other restrictions on my body and fully restore my spiritual power, saying that after that I could give you a hand. And while I started meditating, cloaked in rising red flames, you walked around the hall, burying flags and discs in the walls, floor, and ceiling until the formations were in place. You clearly did not pin your hopes on those formations, knowing they were items you refined in your core formation days and might not threaten a Nascent Soul expert. So afterward you summoned Inu, handed her a powerful treasure, and told her to strike at the critical moment to prevent our opponent from escaping. Inu teased you, asking whether you were not afraid that I would be jealous of her, but then obediently took the treasure, delighted by it, and sank into the ground in a flash of silver light, preparing an ambush, while you released your 3-colored gold-devouring beetles and sent them into the ceiling under a layer of green light. When everything was set up, you strengthened the protection around me with a separate green barrier, then pulled over a wicker chair and sat opposite, silently watching me with some greed in your eyes, as if trying to ease the longing accumulated over many years. Not long after, while you were still staring somewhat dazedly, your expression suddenly darkened, your figure blurred, and you disappeared from the chair, reappearing behind a young yellow-robed female disciple spying at the hall entrance, who tried to deny peeking but could not hide the high-grade invisibility talisman on her body. You questioned why she was lurking in secret, pointed out that an ordinary Foundation establishment disciple could hardly obtain such a talisman, and told her that you would take her back now and leave it to my decision how to punish her afterwards, which scared her so much that she smashed another talisman and turned into a streak of yellow light fleeing down the corridor. You did not chase, only watched coldly, as ahead, at a corridor corner, a panel in the wall spat out pink fragrant mist, swallowing the yellow light, making the girls stumble and fall unconscious. While Inu jumped out from that wall, tail swaying lightly, and walked over to her with a mischievous smile. At the same time, in the distant Sunset Hall, a residence reserved for the moon-covering sect's great elders and layered with heavy restrictions, a streak of red light flew in from afar, circled above the hall a few times, then slipped inside without obstruction, passing through several invisible barriers and into a side chamber. There, a beautiful, pale-skinned woman of about 20 sat on a meditation mat, her body faintly radiating cold, and when the red light stopped before her, she calmly opened her eyes, summoned it with a wave, letting it turn into a fireball in her hand, then snuffed it out after reading the message and muttered that the girl unexpectedly wanted to see her. Deciding that since my attitude seemed to have softened, she might as well take a look, this senior sister turned into a white rainbow and flew straight out of the sunset hall, heading toward my cave residence, where she soon descended, swept the surroundings with her gaze, saw nothing unusual, and opened the stone gate with a white spell. Inside, the yellow-robed girl, now secretly controlled, bowed, greeting her as Grandmaster, and they walked deeper into the cave as the senior praised the girl's recent progress thanks to the pills she had given, and asked whether I had been behaving quietly, without any suspicious moves. The girl carefully reported that apart from seeing a low-ranking steward disciple earlier, I had done nothing special, but after receiving some gift, a crude silver sword, I seemed rather unsettled and sent a sound transmission requesting a meeting. My senior sister thought it was likely an old casual cultivator acquaintance I had met during my travels and considered it nothing unusual, but still ordered the girl to keep an even closer watch on my every move, using the high-grade talismans she had given, promising rich rewards for good work. When they reached the hall in trance, my senior sister wanted to probe with spiritual sense as usual, but before she could, she heard my voice from inside, saying that for the sake of the sect I could reluctantly agree to what she had asked, as long as she first promised me one condition. Overjoyed, she hurried in, saying that as long as I was willing to marry Elder Wei from the Hua Yi sect, she would accept any condition, since with Wei Wu Ya's help the moon-covering sect's prosperity would be just around the corner. But when she looked inside, she saw me sitting calmly in a wicker chair, holding that rough silver giant sword and examining it as if lost in thought. Confused by this sight, she slowed down yet still entered the hall, but just as she was about to speak, her expression suddenly changed. She clawed backward with a hand turned into sword-like talons toward where the yellow-robed girl had been standing. Facing this strike, the girl only gave a strange smile, bent low, flashed with yellow light, and sank into the stone floor with an earth escape technique, leaving nothing behind but a torn yellow robe, which shocked the senior sister with its unusual proficiency. Without hesitation, she turned into light and shot backward out of the hall, but before she could get far, a long green giant sword whistled in from outside, chopping down to split her in two, forcing her to counter with a sharp cold beam from her finger, and when both attacks exploded, she was thrown back only a few zhang, while the sword shattered into dozens of flying swords swirling around you as you stepped out of the sword formation with a calm smile. She demanded to know who you were and who the fake you had been, while pulling out the red restriction token from her waist, which you immediately recognized, and she coldly warned you that these were internal matters of the moon-covering sect, and that if you did not withdraw, you would make an enemy of all 6 allied sections. I answered that I too had loyal friends in those 6 sects, and if they learned how she treated a fellow Nascent Soul cultivator, they would oppose her rather than help, and I reminded her that although she could use the token to trigger the restriction on me, she should not expect me to stand still and give her time to activate the heart-binding art. With that, I put away the silver sword, stood gracefully, and spat out my life-bound treasure, the vermilion bird ring, while my senior sister's eyes darkened with killing intent, and she released 2 flying swords, one white and one black, which grew into giant blades radiating piercing cold and burning black flame, forming a rare yin-yang ice-fire pair. Still clutching the token, she quietly chanted, making a sinister red glow rise from its surface, but you, watching her closely, immediately threw out a small silver bell, letting it hover above you and ring, sending out sound waves aimed straight at her, while at the same time you activated the formation by striking the stone pillars, causing red and blue light to surge from the walls and converge on her position. She stayed calm, controlling the black and white swords to spin and form a 2-layer barrier that absorbed the sound waves without moving. But then the spreading red and blue radiance engulfed her and the barrier at once, while my vermilion bird ring exploded into a huge fireball that crashed down on her cocoon. At that moment, I also flicked my wrist, sending out a hidden crimson needle you could sense only thanks to your extremely strong spiritual sense. And from within the glowing mass came a muffled groan, followed by my senior sister's angry shout recognizing the lethal Xianxia thorn, which she had believed long used up. You saw that, despite some pain in her voice, her vitality remained strong and realized that the attack served mainly to interrupt her control over the token. So after the formation and the fire pressed her down, you summoned the Black Mountain Treasure Thousand-Layer Peak and threw it into the air, activating its sealing power and sending it crashing down toward her. But the powerful ancient treasure she held, the condensed light mirror, suddenly unleashed a thick five-colored beam that tore through the fire and formation light, sweeping everything aside like a flood, and within that beam my vermilion bird ring appeared, spinning helplessly and unable to escape its binding. You recognized the condensed light mirror as the original one from which your old clear tranquility mirror had been crudely imitated, knowing that even the copy was famous and strong among lower-level cultivators, while the original's true power far exceeded it, and now it had both scattered the hall's restrictions and trapped my life-bound treasure. My senior sister reappeared inside her black and white aura, clutching the dark mirror, its face shining with a murky five-colored light, and the restriction token she had held was gone, while her hand was stained with blood, as if injured through her own barrier by the Xianxia thorn in a way that was hard to believe. Understanding that this was indeed the work of the Xianxia thorn, and seeing my vermilion bird ring held fast, you immediately pointed at the Black Mountain, causing it to vanish from its place and reappear above her head, then drop like a collapsing peak. But she coolly tilted the condensed light mirror up, injected another spell, and split part of the light beam off to meet the falling mountain. You had already prepared for this and stopped the mountain for an instant, then made it spew dense black radiance from its base, which swallowed the thinner light beam at first, even extending down to touch her black and white barrier, making her spiritual energy suddenly chaotic and dim. She spat a mouthful of essence blood onto the mirror, making the resisting beam swell and turn into a five-colored haze that managed to hold up the mountain, the two powers grinding against each other and sending out muffled booms, entering into a stalemate. Seeing this, I concentrated on the vermilion bird ring, which grew and shrank in the beam, letting out phoenix cries as it struggled to break free, and at the same time you tore open your spirit beast pouch, releasing countless golden insects that swarmed together into a horrifying golden cloud. From my mouth came a chant like celestial music, and above my head appeared a gigantic red halo, circulating like Buddha's light and becoming more and more dazzling. The reincarnation divine light that made my senior sister cry out in alarm, asking whether I really intended to risk my life by using such a fearsome power. Thanks for your support. If you liked it, please subscribe. See you next week.